Paranoid Radio, Fright
Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Paranoid. Tell me, boy.
Testicles 1, 2, testicles. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paranoid Radio Podcast, and this is the best show with the best content for the best listeners. I am your humble host, Trebles Garcia. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to jump in from the deep end of the pool and set the fucking mood. Striking with iron is hot. Before anything, I want you to please take your time and drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This allows other people to enjoy the show, as much as I enjoy making it. Also, you can find Paranoid Radio Podcast on Instagram. Make sure you check us out on Paranoid Radio on Instagram. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a special guest here for all of you guys. Truth is, we're not alone. For the first time ever in written human history, patriots from every corner of the country have awakened. And not just American patriots, but freedom-fighting juggernauts, talented men and women that I like to call our own specimen of sleeper cells on a global scale. Digital warriors, keepers of the truth, and bearers of light. What a time to be alive. What a time to not only spread and change the course of humanity for my kids, but also your kids. And call myself a conspiracy theorist. We are the truth spoilers and fucking podcast hosts. And it has been an honor and privilege to meet like-minded individuals with high vibrational thoughts and a keen interest for justice. Sit back and enjoy watching the massive amounts of the deposits into the bank of knowledge done today with our special guest, host, and creative director of his own podcast show, Instagram truther and mind-bending colleague. Please give a warm welcome to Tomcat, the Raptilian, from the Strange Brew podcast show. Welcome, TR.
What's going on, man? What's going on? Yes, I am Tomcat, aka Tom Thompson. I have many aliases, also known as the Raptilian. And I don't know how you want me to get into this, but I can kind of tell you why I do what I do.
I want you to tell me how you got that name. How did it bloom?
Yeah. So I've been aware and awake for a long time. Since I was 13 or 14, I was listening to a lot of punk bands and underground hip hop. I was actually in a metal band as a screamer and the vocalist. So then I started writing music when I was fairly young, and a lot of it was directed towards the way I saw the world. And I started researching and looking into things very deeply. And I had all different names for a long time. Tomcat was something that kind of came along the way because my name was Tom, and then people will call me Tomcat. It was kind of a slang name. And then eventually, my buddy was joking around with me, and, I'm fairly good at creating music. And he was like, it'd be funny because you always talk about the reptilians. Why don't you call yourself the Raptilian? And I was like, I kind of like that. And I would joke about it time to time. I started calling myself that on my podcast. And then eventually I was like, well, I'll just make my stage name for my music, the Raptilian. But I've always been recording music, and I had a microphone. And then years ago, me and my buddies would always sit around and talk about conspiracy theories. And, I was a chef for a long time. So my co-host Billy will tell you that I was in his ear all the time because he wasn't a believer in a lot of this stuff. And I was kind of getting in his ear. I'm like, yo, there's lizard people that control our governments in the world. And he's like, oh, shut the fuck up. So then he went away, and I kind of started the show, didn't know what co-host I was going to have on, just wanted to throw something together because I didn't see anybody else doing this at the time. I listened to one or two podcasts. I was like, I could do this. I talk about this stuff. And then he came back from being out west, and then the rest is history. We started drinking, and then we started talking about all these different conspiracy theories and paranormal stuff, serial killers, and definitely at the beginning, we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just getting absolutely wasted on the show, drinking like a 26er, talking about Richard Ramirez. Oh yeah. So, and then it's all history now. Now we've kind of structured the show that we do, which is very unfiltered, uncensored, dark humor,
Unbothered, yes. Unedited, I get you, dog. Yeah. I get you. That's 100%. Awesome, bro. You know what? How long have you been doing this podcast game? What inspired you? What was the first real conspiracy theory that made you tick? That the one that made you fucking like say, you know what, dog? There's some shit we got to talk about. I got to let it out of my chest, and then dive into research because that's very important also.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I've always questioned the government, especially the music I listened to. I wasn't a fan of what the government was doing, and I thought both sides were shady. But it was interesting. A buddy that wasn't even really into conspiracy theories. I've known him as like pretty much like my whole life. And we were sitting there, and we were like, I was like 16, and
Uh,
he put on a video of Benjamin Fulthorpe. Who knows if he's like a true dude, but he saw talking about harp. So then I started
oh,
researching into harp, and then I started researching even more and more, and then it led me down this rabbit hole of like the stuff that the government was doing to manipulate the weather, manipulate us, and poison our food. And then obviously, then I eventually found David Icke and all these like abductees and stuff like that that were claiming all this crazy information. And then I
huh.
started picking up books and started reading more and more. But like it was a slow start, but essentially around I guess like 4 years ago, I started the show, and a lot of episodes, like probably over 30 episodes, have been taken off and put on Patreon and stuff like that because we were just getting
Ah,
wasted, being dumb and drunk. And I
that's
was
the
like,
shit you
well,
sell.
the true fans will appreciate what we're doing because we said some very off-color jokes and stuff like that. And I just kind of like I got inspired by looking around the world, and I was always viewed as that crazy dude.
Yeah.
Always. People thought I was
Uh-huh.
nuts. And it's just funny now because I know that there's people that I personally have known that are like, wow, you were kind of right about a lot of the stuff that was going on. And I'm like, well, no shit. If you don't question anything, you're not going to learn anything.
True and facts. And now that you mentioned a little bit about fans and people that are really
Yeah.
listening to your show and really interested in listening to your show, please let know our listeners where they can find you, the name of your podcast, and the Patreon link. I'm gonna need you to send that to me towards the end of the show, also,
100%.
if I could put it up on our description.
Yeah, 100%, man. And yeah, you can find me at Strange Brew Podcast, and www.strangebrewpodcast.com has most of our links. I got it updated slightly, but the site is up and it's been going for a while. I just have to tweak it a little bit. But obviously, you know, it'd be great if you guys follow us on Instagram at strangebrew.podcast. I just started getting into X or Twitter now, which I wasn't really keen on, and
Yeah.
so that's Strange Brew Cast. But even like YouTube, we're on Rumble and YouTube. Everything's on a Strange Brew podcast. And I like a lot of the stuff we do, especially when I have my co-host Billy sitting on the other side of the desk, it is fun to watch. We want people to like cast it to their TV, have some drinks with us, smoke up, and just really enjoy yourself because we show a lot of clips and images, and it's usually just a fun time.
Yeah.
We're leading
Yeah.
up to the Halloween episodes now, and like I love
Oh,
all that dark, scary shit, dude.
yeah. Yeah. How long have you guys been doing on the podcast? Like, this sounds like you've been doing it for a couple of years.
Yeah, about 4 years, kind of on and off, and a
Ouch.
really slow start. And it was a lot different than what we do now, considering how drunk we and belligerent we used to get. That's for
Oh,
sure.
I can relate, man. I admire that, bro. I applaud your success and everything you're doing, the evolving, the
Yes,
reshaping of the show, reshaping of yourself, learning what your potential is. It is
mushrooms
amazing.
changed me, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Magic
Mushrooms.
mushrooms changed my life, dude,
Okay.
in a big way.
Tell me about that. What was that experience? Is crazy. So you mentioned something about the scary season. We do have also
Yes.
I like to call it Paranoid Radio, Halloween, the Fright Fest extravaganza every single year.
Oh,
So we
that's fun.
the entire month is just scary shit all
Yeah,
fucking
us too.
yeah. So it's like a third
It's
annual. It'd
so
be awesome
fun.
if we could get you on and we fucking drop
Yeah.
some dark shit on the listeners. That'd
Do
be
some
awesome,
fun
dog.
live or something like that. Like there's definitely so much topics. I also do a podcast I'll shout out with my buddy Aaron from Ireland. It's called
Uh-huh.
Class Horrorcast, and we
Uh-huh.
talk about horror movies. So we're
Wow.
able to like branch off these two shows of have talking about, and he does stuff on his own too, where he interviews a bunch of different like people that have involvement in horror movies and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But it kind of gives us the opportunity to branch off, and like we're gonna do like American Werewolf in London, and then because I watched
Ah.
it outside on mushrooms, so I was like, we got to
Wow.
cover this, yeah, because I have a big projector. And then I was like, and then we'll do like a werewolf style episode on my show, and we're able
Uh-huh.
to kind of branch off in the paranormal, the real paranormal, supposedly, and serial
Yeah.
killers, and then talk about the dark aspect of like the fiction of some of this stuff, right?
You know, there's a very thin veil between the real paranormal, conspiracy theories, aliens, and magic, all of this kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
it all hits on like a certain little middle point, right? And all of them
Yeah, it
hit at a
does.
point where you could connect every single dot to every single thing, and even government or religion. So,
Yeah.
but first, before we get off topic, you
Yeah.
mentioned it, magic mushrooms. Give
Have
me
you
your
tried?
experience on that. No,
Have you tried?
no,
No?
I've only done cocaine accessories. I've done some weed, a lot of beer, light
Yeah.
tequila, but nothing major of that stuff. I'm waiting to get some real hallucinogenics in my body.
Yeah, 100%. It changes your life. So I dabbled a little bit. My friends dabbled a lot when we were teenagers, and I didn't. And I always thought it was strange because at the time, in my beliefs of like the dark and paranormal, and we can get into this at some point. I used to use the Ouija board fairly young in like grade 7. Yeah, and
Ouch.
I have 3 Ouija boards over there that I've collected, and I used to be into this dark aspect and the occult and stuff like that.
Making notes right now. I'm bringing that back,
dude. And then so I was like, I never got into it because I always thought I was gonna have like a bad trip or something like that. But usually, if you have a bad trip, it's because you're not facing what the mushrooms want to show you. But then I like did them once or twice with my fiance, and I was like, this is fun. Like whenever you see shadows, and you're just kind of laughing, and that's always the first experience is you like laugh your ass off. Everything's hilarious. Shadows are kind of moving a bit, and then so I was like, I found this site where I can get them from BC. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start consistently using them because I've done all this research, how they can change your like
you microdose.
Yeah, I actually took a microdose today. I normally don't.
All right.
Yeah, before the show, I was like, fuck it. I haven't done this in a while. Usually I do big trips now. I was doing it every weekend, which some people cannot handle. But I love during the summertime sitting outside watching horror movies, which people think I'm crazy for doing. And then I sit there and like I'm tripping out, and my fiance just kind of has to deal with me being on a different level.
Wow.
And so I started using it consistently, and I had these incredible trips, which had changed the way I look at things. And I've struggled like most people with depression, addiction. I'm open about my stuff. I almost died of a fentanyl overdose years ago. I didn't know it was fentanyl, and a buddy brought over a baggie, and then he didn't know what it was. His buddy gave it to him, and then he must have had a higher tolerance than I did. And then we were doing a podcast kind of shit, and then my lips went blue. And I almost died, and it changed my life where I was like, oh, I'm not touching any hard drugs. This is like a bad idea. And then mushrooms changed me where I used to like smoke cigarettes and vape, and it cut off that addiction pretty quickly. Yeah, it's quite incredible. And I've had these crazy trips where I started seeing through like the veil, and it allowed me to feel more positive in my life and content of where I was. And you like a lot of times people say you can write like your intention down. So
that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you that. So when people take mushrooms, this is an educational episode for me. So I've heard a lot. The reason I don't fuck around with mushrooms as many other podcasters do is because I'm afraid. I feel like my intent will probably get in the middle of the way. I leave with fear almost or with guilt. And I feel like if those emotions are still there and I haven't rid of them, I haven't gotten out of my chest or haven't expressed them in different ways, once I take the drug, I will go spiraling down and I'll have a bad trip. So explain that to me. How does that work?
So the idea is like, if you have a bad trip, it's usually because you're not allowing yourself to let go. Even some of my buddies, like one of my co-hosts, he just drinks beer, doesn't smoke weed, and doesn't do mushrooms. He did mushrooms one time, and he did 7 grams almost, which is
that a lot?
It's way too much. Your first time, you should do like 2 grams, not 7. And he couldn't concentrate on anything. He felt so fucked up, and then he couldn't even. He's like, I'm so he said, try to write down, I'm so fucked up, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't say it, and it's probably because you need to let go and let it do its thing. A bad trip is not necessarily a bad trip. It's because you're not letting go of this stuff, because it's trying to show you things. If you got any trauma or stuff built up in your head, or negative emotions, it will show you that, and it will actually like allow you to rectify it. And to kind of like, and that's why I was always afraid of, like, people are afraid of letting go and letting themselves have this experience. And I have had incredible experiences. My mom had like a miscarriage when I was 8 years old, and I always felt like it impacted me, and she didn't notice. And during one of my trips, I felt her pain during that time. crazy shit. And my aunt and uncle
Wow.
died of addiction, and stuff like that. My aunt died of like
Sorry
alcoholism,
about
and my
that,
uncle
man.
died of,
Sorry
it's
for your loss.
the past, man.
Yeah.
And my uncle died of like a drug overdose. And I was like talking to like my grandparents when I was on this trip, and then them, and I swear to God, I heard my aunt say, "I'm here." And so
You
Norm,
had
that's very
closure.
rare. It's
Yeah.
very rare that that stuff happens like that. So, and
Yeah.
that was on like 7 grams, and that was probably the most I've taken. And it was this ability where you can write down, okay, I want to be more grateful of my life. I want to be more caring and loving. And you maybe even write that down before you start your trip of what you kind of want to learn or take from the mushrooms. But every time I've done mushrooms, I've learned a lesson. One of my favorite ones kind of thing was like that, what do you want to leave here when you die? Because, everybody dies, everybody goes. We never know when, and we never know what's beyond on the other
Mhm.
side. But what do you want to leave in this physical world, right? You want to leave
Mhm.
negative and hate. And sometimes, even on some of my political talks, I call people degenerates and like kind of I am and mean in some way. And even
Mhm.
that, I got to like try to come from a place of love, even though I'm angry about the stuff that is happening in the world. It is very hard to like break that down and come from a place of love. But mushrooms
Wow.
will like change you, the way you look at yourself, the way you look at other people, the way you treat people.
I have a saying, life is not about making money or how many cars you have or even how many deeds you did. It's
Yeah,
about how you impacted other people. And it sounds like
100%.
you're having a spiritual ascendance
Yeah,
experience every single time you fuck around with mushrooms. I'm talking
dude,
about talking
it's
to
wild.
it's wild. Now that I mentioned kind of super spiritual, do you think you're because you mentioned paranormal activity. At
Yeah.
least you've spoken with dead relatives before during the trips.
Yeah.
Do you think you're paranormally activated? Do you think that's
Dude, it's weird. I think that there is weird stuff that goes on and connects with that level. Okay. So like you see like these fractals. A lot of times, like things just like you pay attention more to things like trees look a little different. Like I always say that I think that you're connecting to plant
after you're
consciousness.
high? After you
Yeah.
drop
So
it comes down?
once
Okay.
it starts, you always feel uncomfortable. It sucks. The beginning first hour always sucks. You feel
Okay.
like your guts feel weird. Some people don't feel this at all, but I do. You feel kind of low and your guts feel weird. And then you feel incredible later on. Where like
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like I could run a
Sounds like
marathon.
cocaine.
Yeah, yeah, it's better though, more natural, right? And so
Yeah.
the idea is because the mycelium is going through the ground and it connects to all like plant life and stuff like that a lot of times. Like
Mhm.
and so when you take psilocybin and mushrooms are connected to nature, I think that you connect to like plant consciousness, whatever they view reality as in their spectrum. I think you're able to like kind of connect to that. So there's
Ouch.
and the other side, right? So I've watched TV shows like movies and people have looked like lizards and shit like that. Like their face kind of looks like snaky. And even I was watching a video of James Brown when he's like high as shit on this like news station, and I was like real. I was on a high dose of mushrooms, and I just got this eerie feeling. I was like, this guy's a fucking reptile. Like the way he looked and the way the camera was shifting, I was like, this guy's a fucking reptile. And then my TV shut off, and then there was sound playing through my speaker, even though the
Were you
TV was
high?
off. Yeah, I was on a full dose, and I called the guy Reptilian, and then it like changed it like turned off my TV and shit, and something did, and I was
That's
tripping
fucking
out. And my
wild.
girlfriend was upstairs getting ready, and I was
Mhm.
like, something really weird just happened, like the TV
Oh, so
just
she
shut off. And
confirmed it.
yeah, I
Wow.
was like, it was so bizarre because sometimes in those states of mind, you don't really know, if you're what you're seeing, if you're actually seeing anything. Because most times you see these like if you're on a high dose, you see what they call fractals. It looks
Yeah.
like translucent objects. Sometimes looks like tribal patterns, and they're like you can see it everywhere and stuff in different
Holographic
strains.
style?
Yes, like you can see through it, kind of like I
That's the
almost
veil, dog.
yeah, it's bizarre. So I've tried to look through these fractals and I've seen like demonic faces and I've said like you have no power over me and all this stuff. But there's been
Playing
many
victors, yeah.
times where
Mhm.
I've been outside on mushrooms or watching a movie. This happened last time we were watching American Werewolf in London. It felt like this like dome was around me protecting me, but I felt like there was someone standing beside me like many times on mushrooms, I've felt like there's someone on around like me or staying behind me, and I can see it on my peripheral. So I think because of your state of consciousness on that level, you're probably able to tap in to the
Yeah,
paranormal. Like
to the
people think
higher
I'm
level.
crazy, but I would love to do like a ghost hunt on mushrooms.
Dog. Oh wow, wow. You know what? I'm talking about hunt. Has anybody
Yeah.
hunted for you? And I'm not saying this like a cryptid or alien
Yeah.
but has any other human entity, or at least human bodied shaped bipedal person, comes
Yeah.
up to you and asks you to join a cult, to join some magic ritual shit? Like, has anybody tried to recruit? This is because look, it sounds like you have tapped into a hidden talent. And
Yeah.
I think you have probably, I'm not trying to say that you have a psychic or a gypsy, but
Yeah.
around that realm where you have heightened abilities where you can use some type of ritualistic. You could probably learn some alchemy, learn some magician
Yeah.
shit, and then be able to implement this energy upon other people in a positive or in a negative way. You know,
Yeah.
whatever your heart makes you feel. So, has anybody tried to recruit you?
Not
Assassin
yet,
religions.
but I have. It's very interesting. So when I started using the Ouija board when I was young,
Okay.
I was like in grade 7. My grandmother gave me a Ouija board, and then we started using it. Where me and my friends would
Your
use it on.
grandmother gave you a
Yeah.
Ouija board? This
Yeah.
is a generation on generation type of thing. You
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
have some fucking paranormal activated DNA shit strand on your fucking life.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting because she
Okay.
didn't even really believe it later on, kind of thing, where like, especially near the end of her life and stuff like that. It was kind of
Yeah.
interesting because they used a Ouija board to call upon my mom's friend that committed suicide. And then they were doing the shot glass, and then they asked him about why he did it. And then when they mentioned his parents, the shot glass flew across the room and shattered. This is like before I was born. So she always had this Ouija board, and then she gave it to me. And then me and my friends just started using it all the time. Like we were calling like
Who
Harold
does that,
Houdini.
dog?
Man, we're calling Harold Houdini. He was telling us jokes. Like we were
Dude,
like,
okay. The Ouija board here, at least I'm Latino,
Yeah.
bro. My parents are from Guatemala, and I was adopted at 12 years old by Mexican family. So
Yeah.
all Latinos, I could say this about on a broad spectrum, on a broad
Yeah.
fucking, on a base level event lifestyle. All Latinos demonize the Ouija board as something negative, demonic.
100%.
So we're getting the other side of town here. The other side of the I mean, intent has to do a lot with it too.
Yes.
Tell me this story again. Who you were talking with, Houdini? What the
Yeah,
fuck?
so supposedly we don't actually know, but we would even come home at lunch because I lived close to the school, and we would start using the Ouija board. And it started off where I had this older friend, and he showed me how to create one from like a piece of paper and a shot glass, and you just write out everything. And then eventually I was talking about Ouija boards and stuff like that with my grandmother, and that's that when she gave me the one that she had. So we started using it all the time, calling upon celebrities and people that we thought were like dead, right? And Harold Houdini would tell us jokes, and we were all like emo kind of punk kids. And I'll never forget the one joke. It's very stupid, but I've never heard it before. It was like, how'd the punk cross the road? He was
How?
stapled to the chicken, because punks were all staples and pins, and it was just a dumb, weird joke. But
What
none
the
of us
fuck?
knew it. None of us knew that dumbass joke. So then I started using it consistently. I almost got like obsessed with it. And then so I went to see my aunt, and we were like, I was talking about it, and she's from Jamaica. And then so she was like, never use it alone. I got obsessed with it. I wouldn't eat or like drink any water. I got obsessed with it for weeks, and I had to like throw it out essentially when she lived in Jamaica. And then I went home and I proceeded to use it by myself, even though she told me not to. So dumb.
True
and then
rebel,
so
true punk.
when I started using it, it's all about intention, because you're able to use it as a conduit to connect to the other side, but you don't necessarily know what you're talking to. So as soon as I started getting deep into this research and reading about like different entities and maybe reptilians and stuff like that, it started telling me that it was actually not like a deceased human person, is some of the people I were talking to were alive entities on a different plane of reality. And it was trying to manipulate me. It was trying to tell me that my mom was a reptilian and stuff like that. And that's when I started questioning it. And I was playing it by myself, and I felt it like move my hands. And then it was saying stuff that I couldn't even like think of in the way it was phrasing it.
Do you feel as if, so Mike, I guess this brings the next question.
Yeah.
Have you had negative encounters? And
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
explain to me, how do you close that gate? Because there's a lot of, based off movies and pop culture, we believe that, or at least I only know through movies, because that, I mean, that if you open the Ouija board and you don't close the freaking gate, they hunt you, they attach to you, and then they haunt you for generations to come.
Yeah, I think that I cursed my house that I used to live in.
So it does happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was weird stuff that happened in that home. So I think I opened something, and there was a lot of negative energies at that time. I was drinking a lot and depressed, and they consume your energy. And then so I just think that it attached to like that house, and then weird stuff would happen, like just like I don't know, like doors closing randomly, which was very rare, but like there was weird stuff. Like one time I was sleeping on my stomach, and it felt like someone was sitting on my fucking back, and I couldn't get up. I was
Okay.
laying there and I couldn't get up. And then years later, my buddy, I went to Cuba, and my buddy got left there. He got so drunk before we took the plane, and he was like, this is why I think alcohol can open the door for demons and entities to take
Alcohol
you
is
over.
is a ghost,
Alcohol.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Alcohol. There we
alcohol.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So like, and as much as I enjoy drinking, it's not good for you or anybody like in their spiritual level and stuff like that. But you gotta have some fun in this reality. So he was like in the Cuban airport with just pajama pants on, and and no shirt, no socks and shoes, and he was chewing on his own fucking toenails in the middle of an airport, dude. And
What?
I feel like something took him over, and then so
Yeah.
we had to leave him there. And when we're leaving, he's like screaming, fuck Castro and fuck Cuba. And I'm like, oh my God,
Oh
man, this guy's
yeah.
going to get
Oh, that's
arrested.
gonna get you in. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then so when I went home, I was thinking about him. I was out at a low state of being. I was drinking all week. And then when I got home, and my girlfriend was there, and I just like broke down to her. I was like, Mike's still in Cuba. And then so I've never experienced this before. I was completely sober, trying to sleep. And when I would open my eyes, I saw shadow people looking down at me on my bed, and it scared the living shit out of me. And my girlfriend didn't see it, but I could see it because I was
Because
at this low
you were
energy.
drinking this during this time, or you were high as fuck?
I drank the whole week in Cuba, and then I was home sober. And so
Yeah,
all that,
calm down.
your low energy, your vibrations low. I'm worried about my friend in Cuba. I'm like worried and stressed out. So every time I close my eyes, I'm thinking about where he is in the world in Cuba. And then I'm thinking about where I am. And then when I open my eyes, I would see these like shadow people, creatures, everything that they talk about when it comes to astral projection. I felt like this rushing sensation of a jet, like it sounded like a jet engine in my ears. And every time I would close my eyes and try to sleep, it felt like they were trying to rip my soul out of my body. I kept going to sleep paralysis, and I couldn't move my body.
You were such at a low frequency level, filled your heart and your head with fear, anger, wariness.
Yes.
You were fucking vibing at one of the most lowest frequencies known to man.
100%.
Almost dimming down to their level. Accessible, easy acts. You were wearing a skirt. You're about to get fucked by these fucking ghosts.
Dude, yeah, literally. It's fucked. And I felt it every time I closed I had to go to rip myself out of the sleep paralysis. I've never experienced sleep paralysis other than one other time when I felt like that thing was sitting on my back. Dude, the end of the story is the wildest. I got up. I was completely sober, awake. I walked towards my door, and there was like a 7-foot tall shadow person, and it looked down at me almost like that. And this is before Insidious,
Slender Man.
that movie Insidious, where you see the thing beside the boy's bed. That's what it looked like, and with like a round head, almost what like a reptilian would look like in shadow form. And it looked down at me, and I looked up at it, and I started researching like David Icke around this time. And I opened the door, and I went into the bathroom. And I was like, "What the fuck is going on with you? You know what these things are? They're trying to exhume your energy." And I didn't go to sleep until the sun entered the room in the morning. It's one of the scariest experiences. I've been to jail as a youth, and this was like this way scarier. Some of the scariest shit.
This is a wild fucking story because just the intensity you're speaking on, I'm visualizing this, dog. Like this, I was like, what the fuck? I was like,
dude, it frightened me.
It's
insane. Disapproved to me.
I've seen a leprechaun. I know you're not.
No way.
Fine. I've seen a leprechaun. 100%.
Really?
I've seen it. I was 21 years old. I was not drunk. I was not high. I came out of work. I was living at my parents' house still, and I threw myself on my bed. And I seen a little leprechaun. It was this big. It was a brownie. I don't know if you know what the differences are, but little brownies.
Yeah, we did an episode for Patreon about that shit.
Bam. So let's say this is the pin, right? I don't know if you can see the pin. He was yay big. And then this portion right here, that's his head. So his head was the size of his chest. Like he got a big dome. And
what did you do? That's wild, man.
Nothing. During the process? Well, when I seen it, I seen it. So there was
fuck.
I was sharing my rooms. I was sharing the room with my brother. My brother was in Houston, Texas, in Texas back then. So I threw myself in my bed. We had two little twin size beds, and his bed was facing, I want to say, north, and the moonlight was full. It was a full moon that night, and the fucking moon was just hitting directly to his bed. And he had a pile of dirty clothes on his bed.
Yeah.
And the dude, right where the light was shining, the dude just goes bing, like he sees me. He goes down on the freaking again under the dirty clothes.
Weird.
And I seen him jump behind we had the box TVs back then. We didn't have the flat screen TVs, so he jumped behind the TV. And you could hear him like jump,
Weird.
like you could hear his little steps. Check this out. As soon as that happened, my door was yay open, like it was open like slightly. I want to say 3 inches, and then maybe less. And he goes like this. He looks at me from the side of the TV, and he goes boom. He books it out the door, bro. 2 seconds.
That's
Listen
so
to this.
Bizarre.
2 seconds after I seen him dash outside of the door, my dad opens his door to the room to go to the restroom at like 3 a.m. in the morning. So what happened was he heard my dad's footsteps and he dashed out, or else if my dad wouldn't have waken up, I would have had a longer experience with this motherfucker. So
that is crazy, dude.
It's wild, dog. And I never seen him again after.
They believe, like Irish people, like one of my co-hosts is Irish, and they truly believe in some of these elemental creatures, these beings that sometimes pop in and out of a reality, like Bigfoot or something like that maybe exist at a different like frequency, and they supposedly are protectors of like nature and certain things. And like there's people that we did episodes on like pixies and fairies and shit, and there's people that legitimately believe in these like elemental creatures that we only can see sometimes because they're not like in our frequency. They're at like a different dial on the radio. You know what I mean? Same
thing with those fucking ghost paranormal activity shit that you fucking went through. Because now, after the light shine through, you're going back to your story. After the light shine through the freak, this is gonna be a Halloween episode, by the way. This is dropping in October as the opener of the freaking Fright Fest extravaganza. You opened up, you opened up the freaking thing. You seen the sunlight shine through your door and through your windows, and everything's bright. What happened after? How did you go on? And did you go through another experience right after that?
So this was the most prominent experience that I've ever had. And my fiance, like my girlfriend at the time, I was young, I was still with her. She didn't really know what to do and what to make of it. And she believed me, but she just couldn't see them in the way that I did and stuff like that. She was just trying to sleep. And I went through this frightening experience. The next day, I'm like, it proved to me that there's stuff outside of our reality, because I was completely sober. And like I joke on my show that I've told the story so many times just because of the fact that it changed my life in the way that I view our reality, and that I already proved to myself that at least negative entities and things exist beyond this dimension, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then it changed me. And the thing is, because I've never been that low in a long time, I have not really had much experiences other than like things of seeing things out of my peripheral and all that. And it's been a while since I've used the Ouija board. Me and my co-host tried to use it in a graveyard, and you're not always going to get answers in a graveyard because most dead people would go to where they were most comfortable and felt at home. They wouldn't be hanging around a graveyard with other dead bodies. So I would love to do some more ghost activity, like hunts and stuff like that, and go to haunted locations. Eventually we have plans to do that one day, but you got to be careful of messing around with some of this stuff, and you have to be
very respectful of it.
Yes.
Very respectful of it. That is insane. And I really hope that you record that experience, because I am dying to listen to your research and everything you go through. It really sounds like you are paranormally activated. And you know what? You were talking about how you were at a very low frequency at that moment when you seen these ghosts looking down upon you. And this is, now I'm not religious by all means, but this is why people sometimes to start tapping into a higher frequency and a higher divine creator when they start praying, once they see they start praying, they're elevating their frequency to get higher and outside of their spectrum, outside of that reaching point for them. You get me?
It's intention. And it's like a protection thing, almost like a spell, right?
And you do it yourself upon you, right? This is you. Okay.
Yeah. So like, it's like that. And this is funny, like, cause I think it's intention, because I don't necessarily know. I know I got friends that are religious and Christian and stuff like that. And I understand why they believe in what they do. But the whole idea of like, we don't know who Jesus was. There was like Mithra and Krishna and all these other different entities and in Egyptian times that had the same kind of story as Jesus. And then the whole idea that in the Bible, Jesus' name was Yehoshua. So why do we call him Jesus now? So there's this idea that, maybe we've manipulated religion along the way, but even if we did, It
Yeah.
is all about intention. So if you
Mhm.
like think more positive and you make your surroundings more positive, and that's why I think I've been able to protect myself, and I feel like I've let go of these entities, because the one I stupidly introduced my stepbrother to the Ouija board, and then he started using it, and in his house stuff started moving, and demons were telling him like astronomical like mathematic signs, and weird really weird shit I've never even heard of. And
He didn't
they
close the
saw
gate.
shadows. No,
He
they
didn't
saw
close the gate.
shadows move, their stuff moved in their house. And
Wow.
then so when we were using it one time, it was interesting, and they probably thought I was doing it, but it wouldn't work. I brought my own Ouija board unless I put my hands on it, because obviously I have some connection to it. And it told me that I had 9 spirits attached to me, that some were good and some were bad. And even my fiance is pretty into the paranormal stuff like that. And we were talking about the one day we're outside, we're talking about ghosts, and we live in this old town, and we're at this house that we live in was just dropped here. We don't know where it came from. It's been here for a long time, but they actually moved the structure from somewhere else, and we don't really know. So we're talking all this paranormal stuff, and there's like ideas that even ghosts that are walking around the streets, maybe they get hit by a car, they don't know that they're dead, all that stuff, they can attach to certain people. So if they see that you are open to this stuff, then these ghosts might follow you around, they might attach themselves to you. And there's even entities that will, like, if they were an alcoholic in their past life and they're stuck in some sort of purgatory, they'll like go to a bar and then like sit in the place of somebody that is alive drinking, and then pretend to like drink with them, because it's this natural thing that they did when they were alive.
Yeah. Wow. That is
Yeah.
a huge freaking breakdown. So is there a way to really close down after you're done with doing your process with the Ouija board? Is there a way to close it down so that you don't get attached, or is it still
You definitely have to say
intent?
goodbye. You definitely have to say goodbye. But the idea is like that you kind of like close the door and use some sort of intention, because like there's a chant we used to say, there's air, fire, water, earth, elements of the astral birth. I call upon whoever now to the power of 3 times 3. Only good may enter, only good may leave. And you're supposed to have this intentional chant, and then at the end you would be like, I now close the door. But they can still probably attach themselves to you. So it's all about staying positive. And I've felt since I've done mushrooms that I've been able to close that door.
That is
Regard.
That is powerful. That is powerful. And I said that 3 times because that is extremely powerful. That I've never heard that chant before. I've learned something today, and I really want the listeners to check you out. I want you to, again,
100%.
in the middle of the show, I want you again to tell them where they can find you, and then we're going to go to the next topic.
100%. So yeah, you can find me again at Strange Brew Podcast, anywhere. Strange Brew Cast on X. I'm trying to be a little more on there, but like I said, we're on all podcast platforms. We have a lot of people on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And also, if you're interested in hip hop and stuff like that, I rap a lot of conspiracy based, truther kind of.
Send me some music, bro.
Yeah, I've done it for a long time, and I call it some of the hypocrisy of the government and all that. So you can look up The Raptilian. I finally put my music out on Spotify and YouTube.
Oh,
music.
Shit, I'm gonna go right now.
I used to slang CDs when I was like a teenager, and now I'm like, oh, I should finally do this after all these years. And you can find that on YouTube too at The Raptilian, and I would appreciate that because that's just starting to go now.
That's fucking awesome. Look at that. Massive plugs. Make sure you check them out on YouTube, The Raptilian, and also check them out at the Strange Brew Podcast. Now, talking about how you mentioned, this is awesome how you mentioned a lot of hypocrisy with the government. And it's very hypocritical with how to freaking break down those syllables. It was very hypocritical that recently there has been statements by doctors on TikTok and on YouTube and on podcasts that the Nile virus is here now in North America. I live in LA, and it has just been announced that we are now have been infected, certain people in certain areas of LA. I live in the heart of LA, bro. So I know how the homeless situation is. I know how the government can be a little hypocritical. You know what? Can be fake as fuck, not hypocritical, just fucking fake. And I also know that Bill Gates just recently released a bunch of, at least Bill Gates and his foundation, all his networks. I also found out that they also just released a huge amount of genetic modified mosquitoes in the form or for the reason of to depopulate the rest of the other mosquitoes, the real mosquitoes. I mean, those are the ones that nature brings out. What's your take on that, bro? What you got to say, dog? You have to
Dude,
do some
it's
pump.
bizarre because like I've always said for years, right? I'm trying to wake people up that they're actively trying to kill us. They want to like, make the population smaller because less people are more easy to control. But you see them like there's video footage of like helicopters dumping like bugs. Like you see these clouds, they almost look like smoke, but it's
Yep.
like thousands of like
Looks like
mosquitoes and
cloud
bugs.
seeding, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like they're dropping it in Florida and LA and all these major cities, and obviously then they want people to contract these diseases, or the fact that some of these antibodies or whatever that are inside these mosquitoes that end up like injecting into people, and then they get allergic to like meat, all that stuff, all the stuff. Like
wait, rewind.
Yeah.
You said mosquitoes with genetic modified mosquitoes,
Yeah.
whatever. They come down, they sit on you, they bite you, and then they make you allergic to meat.
Yeah, and then you can be allergic to red meat. People are getting allergies to red meat now.
And who is the largest farm owner of the world?
Bill Gates.
At least North America, and investing heavily using this farmland for genetically modified fake meat.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why they're all
Gates.
pushing this agenda, and that's why people are like, "What? These people are old, like Klaus Schwab or even like George Soros. Why do they care? Why do they want to do this? They're gonna die soon." And I'm always like, because they're not human. The idea of these reptilian shit is that they will insert themselves into positions of power, and from the research that I've done, they will actually reincarnate constantly in certain bodies. They adapt to these families, and then so once they die, they're not dead. They'll just come into a new body and the next year or two or whatever, right? It's wild, dude.
You mentioned something right now. What you just said, but in the beginning of the rant, you also said that you think that they're trying to depopulate. Now, I have a theory.
Yes.
Based off the last point that you just brought in, how they also reincarnate. Now, we also recreate, we reincarnated. I don't think they're trying to depopulate us. I think they're trying to speed up our birth and death process so they can collect more souls and more energy. The more people they have vibrating at a lower frequency level through fear, through propaganda, through negative fucking vax and all this bullshit, and the more people that are born gay. I'm not having anything against gay people, but you know what I mean. They indoctrinate these young kids. They died at a very young age because they're freaking pharmaceutical shots every single day. They're cutting off their dicks and shit. They are automatically from birth being already indoctrinated and also practicing sin, which makes them in a negative fucking low frequency level for the rest of their entire existence. And once they die, they go straight to fucking hell. And then the next generation and next generation. So depopulation, I don't think depopulation is a real thing. I think they're trying to speed up the birthing and death process for they could collect more souls and more souls and more souls.
I agree. And it might not even be like, I've done research. So like, it is interesting. Hell is not necessarily mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in older texts and stuff like that. But this idea of like a different duality or reality, right? Like I think hell is a manifestation of the mind kind of thing. So if you're on your deathbed and you're dying of cancer and you've maybe did a little boy or something like that, you did some bad shit, and then you think you're going to go to hell, you'll probably wake up in some alternate reality of this dark.
It's called a waiting room. You have some elevated music behind that shit, dog.
Yeah, dude. And then, so I think that it's quite possible that reincarnation is slavery, that we live in a prison planet where we get shot back into our bodies every time we die. And then we're constantly being food and energy for these reptilians, because why would you let people ascend and go to a higher level if you could able to trap them and control them? And then have them consistently have food because their food source is different than ours. They like exhume this energy, and that's how they stay alive and stuff like that. So this idea that we're stuck in this prison planet of them constantly consuming us, and then that's why I think we're trying to break free. But everyone knows this. Look around. The world is fucking in chaos. Everything is on fire. They're pushing propaganda and fear. They want everyone to be a subscriber to Big Pharma because that's what it is. And stuff like that. And I'm anti-vax as they get. I don't believe any of that shit was good. I think that we've been fed a fucking line, and that they don't actually, that they've been using this since the beginning of time, or since the beginning, especially of vaccinations being more prevalent, is using it to depopulate. People are fucking allergic to everything, to peanuts, to all this shit that they never were before. And people are like, I have my mom and grandmother were both nurses, and I think that they were indoctrinated by that system. And they're always like, they were like, vaccination doesn't cause autism. I'm like, well, they proved it in one case in a court of law that this like little girl actually got autism from a shot. So I'm like,
Why do you think
They're not gonna expose it?
they make you sign this fucking no waiver shit right before you get the vaccine for the COVID? Because they don't want you to sue them. They are not liable for any damages to your fucking body. Plus, you switch out your DNA with RNA, your freaking your human rights goes out the fucking window.
You're not human anymore.
They're not human anymore.
Yeah,
You know, we did an
100%.
episode on maritime law and the land of the law. I mean, law of the
Dude.
land. And the
Yeah.
United States really operates on maritime law. As a matter of fact, once I claim, well, if I do a federal offense and I go to court and they're telling me, you know what, one of the biggest questions they ask you once you do the three strikes, they ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? Once you admit that you're a U.S. citizen, you're a private corporate entity owned by Washington, D.C., which is also its own entity because it's between two different states. It's a city-state of itself, like the Vatican.
The United States is a corporation. Canada is too, in a way. So there's a wild thing of that Canada isn't a sovereign nation. And there's this thing called Canada is myth, I think, or the myth is Canada. People should look this up because it's fascinating. I want to do an episode about it eventually. But this guy's compiled research over 16 years and claimed that like we're still obviously under the British rule, because if you go to a court, you see a judge and the crown, which the crown is the Church of England and all this stuff. So it's kind of fascinating. Most people don't understand that. And that's why I think that the government knows this stuff and knows that, like, you know, once you get your birth certificate, then that's literally a certificate that you're owned by the corporation of the country. And they've turned these countries into corporations. And it has a
stamp of the Department of Commerce on it. Mine has a Department of Commerce stamp on it. And what you said,
That's
even
wild.
the word liberty is a term used in that from only a captain can give the sailors liberty to come to leave off the deck of the ship and come back once it's docked. So that's even the words are used against you. You think that the Statue of Liberty there is to show freedom. Freedom and liberty are two different freaking words.
100%.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final statements of we got Tomcat, the Raptilian from Strange Brew podcast here on the show. Yo, Tom, let them know where they can find you one last time.
So yeah, you can find us, like, especially subscribe to that YouTube. You got, you know, join us. We have drinks, we have a lot of fun. And the whole point of why we do what we do is there's a lot of dark, negative things in this world constantly. And there's conspiracy after conspiracy, which end up turning out to be truth and all that stuff. But we want to give people something fun and light. And even I had a fan mention that we never really got too political. I'd always mention stuff all the time. I'm always mentioning what our crime minister or whatever like that. But I am very open and spoke out against a lot of the stuff. I have like all these followers on TikTok that came from just me stating my opinion about the government. Like thousands of people like my stuff and follow me and all that stuff and see me as some sort of leader just because I openly speak my mind about the things that I think are wrong with this world. But what we do on the show is like, I want to like make people laugh. And a fan recently just said that they enjoy our political banter and that we're able to do this in this kind of lighthearted way. You know, and that's what we want. We want to make people laugh and kid around about some of these very dark topics, you know. So I have to Strange Brew podcast.
I completely agree with you. You have to, it can always be night, bro. You have to bring some light and some comedic relief to when you have these deliveries, dog. You have to.
100%,
so, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you check out the Strange Brew podcast, and Tomcat, the Raptilian on YouTube and on every single podcast platform. Drop a 5-star review on their show. You like the show. Thank you so much again, Tomcat, dog. This is amazing. Yeah, bro, it was amazing.
Yeah, I loved it.
Thank you so much, Rob. Hopefully we could collaborate again towards the middle of October and drop another massive bomb and deposit more into the bank of knowledge, big dog. That's what's up, man.
100%.
Thank you, man. This is Paranoid Radio Podcast. Make sure you drop a 5-star review on the podcast. It allows other people to enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it. You can find us on paranoidradio.com. Paranoid Radio on Instagram. Paranoidradio.com will be up and running. We switched servers, so we'll be up and running again on Friday. Make sure you check us out. Paranoid Radio, Tomcat from Strange Brew Podcast. Thank you so much, bro.
Paranoid Radio.